working towards a goal, when we're trying to make changes, especially when it comes to nutrition and fitness, we got to give it time. If you don't give it time, you don't put in that consistency, then you're probably not going to see the change.
Welcome to the Shift Work Athlete Podcast. We connect with shift workers conquering life challenges and chasing big fitness goals. The goal of this podcast is to inspire and motivate our shift work community to stay fit and stay healthy with such a unique lifestyle. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you, Kaitlyn Myles. I came across Kaitlyn's profile on Instagram, and we became friends. We're followers. I don't know. I've been on social media for so long, I forgot what it's called. But we ended up building a connection, and I got to know more about her, and I got to learn and see that she is now a dietitian who is trying to focus on helping shift workers live a much healthier life when it comes down to their eating routines, the supplements that they take, and just overall health and wellness. So, Kaitlyn, thank you so much for joining me today on the Shift Work Athlete Podcast. You know who I am already, Spencer Barlow, so nice to meet you. And can you please introduce yourself and share who you are?
Absolutely. Thank you again so much, Spencer, for having me. It was wonderful when we first connected. I know when I came across your profile on Instagram, I was really excited to see not only a shift worker and someone promoting, shift work in athletics, but also someone in the Hamilton area, which is not something I see most days when I'm looking at people on Instagram. Very exciting there. So yes, I'm Kaitlyn. I am a registered dietitian. So a little bit about me, I got into nutrition more within the high school realm. I always had an interest in, how to best fuel myself in terms of athletics. I was a big soccer fanatic. That was about 12 years of my life. I went into wrestling as well for a couple of years in high school. Super fun. Yeah, it was a unique experience. I loved it. Big overall in activity, and really was always curious what was going to fuel my body to the best of my ability. When should I be eating? What should I be eating? So that kind of drove me to applying to programs. I ended up at St. FX, finished an undergrad degree in nutrition. I have my nice X ring here. Very proud.
Sick. That's really cool. I didn't know that they're giving out rings there for that. Jeez, I'm jealous.
Yeah, it's actually the third most recognized ring in the world. So it's pretty up there.
Wow, that is a serious club. So when you see somebody, you just show them the ring. There's no communication, just eye contact ring, and
yeah.
You just know that they're a brother or sister?
100%. Cool. Yeah. As soon as you see anybody from St. FX, it's like you've known them your whole life, whether or not you've met them.
That's wonderful. Really cool. Are you born and raised in Hamilton?
So I was born in Guelph, and I spent most of my life in Kingston, but now I'm out here in the Hamilton area with my partner. He's a police officer. So we came, and he's working in Haldimand County. So right next to the Hamilton area.
Awesome. Really cool. Yeah, I would definitely like to get into more about your fitness background as well later on in the podcast, especially with wrestling stuff. I personally have never done wrestling. I've done jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, but wrestling's a whole nother level. And women are vicious. I think they're more vicious than men, personally.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Awesome. Well, great introduction. So, Kaitlyn, let's just jump into it. So, you did mention that your partner is a shift worker. I know when we were talking over Instagram, you had mentioned your parents were shift workers as well. Can we get into that? How was that living with parents that were shift workers?
Yeah, 100%. So that was my first exposure to shift work. My mom has been a nurse for probably about 20 years now. She had always, kind of done they call them sets, rotating sets. So day shifts and then followed by night shifts and then followed by about 4 or 5 days off. That was super weird to me at first because, in high school and whatnot, you're not used to people working night shifts, especially parents, when they're out and gone and you're the one in charge of making dinners or what have you. So that was really unique. And I felt like that gave me a whole new perspective on shift work. And I saw, a lot of the challenges that came with it too, from her end, the tiredness, all those long hours at work, staff shortages too, which was a big thing for nurses, which, I really feel for them. She usually actually would stay for overtime most shifts. So that puts her about 16 hours. Yeah, it's a long day.
Long days.
And then you're expected to, go home, make dinner for your family, or if you're working a night shift, get up soon after and kind of go through the daily activities. It's not what the normal shift work lifestyle would really adjust well to. So it's kind of learning how you can adjust best to still, do what you got to do, spend time with your loved ones, but without compromising, the quality of your sleep or anything like that.
Right. Are you an only child?
Actually, I have a brother. He is a couple years older than me. He's actually in pharmacy school. So we're a big healthcare family here. We've kind of
Oh,
come at
wow.
it from all angles.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's nice that you're able to sit down at the dinner table and just share like healthy knowledge. You know what I mean? And everybody can relate and understand. That is really cool. How long has your mom been a nurse? Sorry.
About 20 years now.
Wow, 20 years.
Yeah.
And she's still in Guelph?
She's actually in the Kingston area.
Oh, in the Kingston area.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you French too?
No, I'm not French.
No? Okay. Usually a lot of people, like majority, not a lot of people, but anytime that I've kind of gone to Kingston, I find that French it's like 50-50 there, right? So, okay, that's really cool. That's awesome. And how's your brother doing so far in school?
Good. He's about halfway through now. It's quite demanding that you have to do a 4-year undergrad degree and then, follow it up by even getting into a pharmacy school. So that's, I think, another 5 years. But he's about halfway through pharmacy school and he's enjoying it.
That's fantastic. Well, good luck to your brother, and I wish him nothing but the best. That's awesome. Okay, let's get into the dietitian. Kaitlyn Myles, the dietitian. So you got to see what your parents went through when it came down to the shift work. Why was your path dietitian and not nurse or, doctor, or anything along those lines?
Very good question. One, honestly, that I've had in my mind for so many years now. But it comes down to I'm not good with blood. I love the medical field, but I'm not good with blood. So I was like, let's just go with nutrition because, I can deal with food.
Awesome. And were you a big help to your mom with food as well? Were you always in the kitchen and, searching foods or giving her advice?
Yeah. So one of the things that kind of drove me again to the dietitian role was I love to look up fun foods, try out recipes, but I always like to make my pictures on Instagram really pretty with my food, we'll say.
Yeah. No,
big
you do a
on
good job with
that.
that.
Yeah. Thank you. And I had that going for quite a few years. I was really into the aesthetics of how great food could look, but also, when you break it down to the components, how beneficial it was for our body. So a lot of the time I'd be making dinners, cooking up new stuff, just anything to help her out because, it's a demanding field shift work. So that kind of got me used to, adjusting as I needed and kind of being able to help out too.
Awesome. So with your boyfriend, do you mind sharing his name?
Yeah, his name's Marshall.
Marshall? Okay, so with Marshall, how does it work with living with Marshall and him doing shifts?
Sure. So he works quite similar, the same kind of schedule as my mom did. So something that we're pretty used to. He starts off with 2 or 3 day shifts, followed by 2 or 3 night shifts, and then he'll have some time off. So we are still in the midst of adjusting to his schedule because he just started actually in February. So he's still pretty new. But we've had, all these months to kind of get into a better routine. So for him and, for us in general, I always like to start off a couple days before he starts his set of shifts by, planning out meals, getting an idea of what it is that we would want for the week, and then actually going grocery shopping the day or a couple days before he starts just to get that all out of the way. I found that's been a huge help for us because, the worst is when it's dinner time and you're trying to figure out what to eat and you're just staring in your cupboard or your fridge, as we all probably been there, right? And I find it so easy to keep a list of 3 or 4 meals on my phone that I know we have the stuff for and that we can prepare. So that's kind of how we've been going about it. Night shifts and stuff are new, and when I'm working too, it can make things a little trickier, when he's sleeping in the day for a night shift or when he's gone for 12 to 16 hours for his day shifts, just to get other stuff done at home. But we're adjusting well to it, just finding out little tips and tricks that help us. And the best part of it is I can actually share those tips and tricks with my clients that I work with. And it's kind of like a full circle. So that's really exciting.
That's awesome. Do you mind sharing some of those tips and tricks with us?
Sure. Yeah. Well, one is use your freezer. Like the freezer can be so villainized sometimes, from a food perspective. But, as a dietitian, fun fact that I shared a little bit ago was, frozen vegetables and fruit can actually be just as nutritious as fresh ones. And the reason is because they are actually picked at the peak of freshness and they're actually flash frozen there. So as soon as they're frozen, the nutrients stay within it. They take way longer to actually compromise the quality. Whereas fresh ingredients, when they're being transported to, grocery stores or what have you, they will start to, decompose or lose a little bit of those extra nutrients. So frozen foods, huge game changer. We like to keep a whole bunch of like frozen veggies on hand, frozen fruit for smoothies, even like frozen sausages or frozen kind of burgers or stuff like that we enjoy. We always try to look for ones that have, decent amount of protein with a kind of a medium to lower amount of fat, just to keep in mind, some of those frozen foods can have preservatives, but it's really just about kind of consuming in moderation and just being mindful of the products you're picking. But we like to stack our freezer up with as much stuff as we can, because then, when I'm at home and I'm like, what are we going to make for dinner? I have frozen vegetables in the freezer. Those aren't going to go bad. We have some sausages, and then we also have like pierogies or something like that. A quick option on those days we really don't have time, which is something, I think we can be hard on ourselves for.
Huge.
We don't want to, we think it's compromising, the quality of our food and what we're eating, but really it's about being realistic too, because shift work is not the norm. Shift work is a much different challenge. So yeah, freezer is definitely a big one.
Awesome. And it saves you money as well at the end of the day, right? When you're always buying fresh produce, like it's going to expire in 2 to 3 days if you're getting organic. Like my girlfriend and I, we go to the grocery store 2 times a week. Like we spend a decent amount of money, but we get a mixture of fresh produce with stuff that we could also put in the freezer. So I couldn't agree with you more. And you know what? It took some time. Like you said, you start to establish the routine more as you keep working through, the days, and we have finally came down with a routine that works best for both of us. We are both on the same page when it comes down to eating food, which makes it so much easier. So you're not cooking 2 different meals for somebody, right? Is that how you guys as well? You're pretty much on the same page for food?
Oh, 100%. I think if we had to cook 2 different meals, that would be too much.
Too much, right? So like when it comes down to being a shift worker, convenience starts to really play a big factor. And there's a couple tools that I've came across on Amazon that I've purchased, like a rice cooker, crock pot, just even freezing your food, like you said, like those things there save so much time. You put the food or whatever grain it is and walk away and come back and get it later on. You could focus on doing other things, right?
100%. Yeah, you totally hit the nail on the head there.
Awesome. Is there any other tips that you guys use as well, or tools that you guys use?
Yeah, one other one I was just thinking is, if you're making dinners already and, you don't want to think about what you're going to have for lunch the next day, just make like a whole bunch of servings at your dinner. And then just freeze those in individual portion sizes, or, put them in the fridge depending on how much you make. And then just, pull them out for a quick and easy to go lunch for work. It's all about, finding ways to kind of cut down on the steps you need to take and the work you need to do with still, making sure that you're getting that good quality and good nutrition in. And honestly, I think that's another great way to try.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's crazy how I find people like think of food being such a complicated choice to make. Like it shouldn't be that hard, right? It's, get a vegetable, protein, and some sort of carb, right? Now let's actually get into that. Do you have like a list of select foods that you feel shift workers should kind of like focus more towards?
Honestly, great. That's a great question. So the first thing I think of, because a lot of the time dietitians too are asked, what foods should I eat? What foods should I not? What foods are good? What foods are bad? We like to take, or at least I personally like to take the stance that, all foods are equal. They're just all different nutrition, obviously. In terms of shift work, I always try to stress, with my clients and then just with any shift workers in general, is always including protein. So a big thing I've seen in terms of research is that shift workers, because you're kind of going against the circadian rhythms, you're staying up through the night, you're sleeping in the day, it can kind of throw your body out of whack in terms of hormones and whatnot. So that's basically what your circadian rhythm is. And when that happens, it can sometimes affect our blood sugars too. So, sometimes you might notice they can be a little bit higher. Obviously, like nothing in terms of diabetes, but just something to keep in mind because, when it's been so many years of shift work and, your blood sugars are being affected by circadian rhythms, it can be something that could become problematic down the line. So a big thing is always including a source of protein, because when we're thinking about protein foods, there's something that will help satisfy us. So it's called satiety. So keep us full and keep us satisfied. And also they're a lot slower when we're trying to break them down. So when we eat something and our stomach's digesting it, it takes a lot longer for our bodies to actually break down protein foods, which is why it's much better at regulating our blood sugar. So it won't spike them as quick when we know, in comparison to something like, we'll say like cereal or like ice cream or whatnot, which is all just straight carbs. So carbs, when we're breaking those down, are essentially just little molecules of sugar. And when we're just consuming those, it's much easier for our stomach to break them down. You see a much quicker rise in blood sugars. So protein foods, and especially a protein combined with a carb so that we're getting energy too from our carbs, that's a huge thing for shift workers. Just something to keep in mind. I wouldn't say necessarily there's such things, good or bad foods for shift workers, but just always having the tool and always, utilizing protein throughout the day and through the night.
Absolutely. And it's great how you've mentioned, there's no bad or good. It's about when you choose to use that food for fuel or, just recovery, etc. Right. And that's the same thing for myself as a shift worker, but as an athlete as well. Like there's foods that I just need because I just have to get certain calories in my body just for replenishment. Right. Okay. So you had mentioned carbs. Is there any other carbs that you would like to combine with the protein?
Yeah. So in terms of carbs, there's a whole bunch of different ones out there. Complex carbs, or what we refer to complex carbs, are something such as, pastas, rice, quinoa, etc. So those are carbs that have a little bit more to them. So they take a little bit longer for your body to break down. Those are good for, lunches, dinners, etc., just to keep us full. In terms of other types, so there's also more of it's called a simple carb. So things like, cookies, ice cream, things that are much easier for our body to digest and break down. For carbs, I just always like to emphasize, trying to include a whole grain. So you're getting that fiber in your diet. Fiber is another great nutrient. It's something that when you're consuming it, it's really good at also keeping you full. So again, it's going to help with your blood sugars, and it's just going to help, you make sure you're not feeling hungry 10, 15, 20 minutes after you consume a lunch or dinner.
Awesome. No, that's really good feedback. Feedback. That's really good information. Jeez. When it comes down to the fiber and carbs, and we won't get into fats yet, and proteins, is there, people, I find a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like having protein shakes, or, I can't afford to buy supplements, or maybe they can afford to buy supplements. Is there, what are some not quick ways, but efficient ways that people can get these nutrients that they need, such as the carbs, the proteins, besides them always, making gourmet meals?
100%. That's an awesome question, Spencer. The first thing, I love that you pointed out the supplement. So the one thing I always like to emphasize is, we call it a supplement for a reason. It's supposed to be supplementing your diet if you're not able to get enough proteins or anything else in. So most people, if you are eating a balanced diet, you're getting enough through the day, you probably won't need any kind of supplement, essentially a protein supplement. Again, everybody's different. If you're high activity and you have high activity levels, obviously that's going to differ. You're going to have higher requirements than other individuals. But I honestly wouldn't even worry about going for protein supplements if it's just, somebody who they're a shift worker, they're, moderately active, but they're just trying to get some more protein in their diet. There's so many options. If we're talking about animal meats, any animal byproducts, so things such as yogurt, Greek yogurt especially is a good protein source if you're looking for a high protein yogurt. As well, tofu is a great complete protein for plant-based individuals. Tempeh, cheese is also a good protein. It does have some fats, obviously, but it does give you some protein too. Different milks too contain protein, nut butters, even trail mix and things like that. There's so many different proteins. And a lot of the time, we are consuming a lot more protein than we think.
Right.
I just met with a client this past week, and, we were kind of setting her up on macros, and she was like, oh, these protein needs are really high, when I let her know what we're kind of aiming for. And I was like, when I was actually going through what you've been eating the past couple of weeks, I did the average of your protein intake, and you were actually, about here, which was probably only about 30 grams off of what our goal was, which was actually a lot closer than she actually thought. So it's just, good to keep in mind. A lot of the time we do get a lot of protein in our diet without even realizing it. Whole grains as well. A lot of those contain some protein, something that most people might not think of. So I would definitely recommend just checking out your day-to-day foods and, see what the protein intake is there, and kind of leaving supplements for the last option if you really do feel like you need it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. It depends on your level of activity, and looking at having those as a last resort, right? Like that's definitely a good advice. Okay, let's get into fats.
Yes. Oh, I love this topic. So
me too.
I do. In terms of fats, like, I know it can be villainized, and it has been villainized for so many years. I think it's always important to just actually pay attention to what kind of fats you're actually including and eating in your diet, because that's the most important factor, aside from, how many grams of fats you're eating. If we're talking about saturated fats, so that's something such as, fatty animal meats or animal byproducts, they tend to be a little higher in saturated fats. That's something you kind of want to try to moderate and limit. That's something that can affect our heart health. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. We're talking like unsaturated fats. So that's just a fancy word we use for, healthier fats. Avocados, olive oil, different things like that. So that's something that we like to include in our diet because it actually is good for us. It does have some positive effects on our heart health. So that's something good. And then in terms of trans fats and whatnot, in Canada, I believe there has been a ban on those in the past couple of years. So that's something you probably won't see in maybe like any foods, I think. But that's something, again, to limit. That's also considered probably the worst of the worst fats. But, again, the ban has definitely helped out in limiting trans fats in Canadian foods. So that's exciting. Just paying more attention to, what types of fats you're consuming, in consideration compared to, how much fat am I consuming? Because some fats actually have some really great nutrients and things that our body does need.
Awesome. Okay, that's awesome. Is there a difference between a man and a female level of nutrients that they should be having when it comes down to their fats, their proteins, and their carbs, or can you give us like an average that is good for everybody?
Yeah, that's a great question. So males and females, for the most part, have quite different needs. It's really difficult for me to say just without, having a specific individual and knowing, their factors, whether it's, any health conditions, what their activity level is, what their weight and their height is. Like a whole bunch of factors plays into their requirements. I would mostly recommend, if you're really curious about figuring out what your requirements are, to reach out to a registered dietitian and kind of just have a chat. Because, it's so individualized. I would love to give more information, but it's so difficult without having someone in front of me to, give that information
For sure. Awesome. Thank you, Kaitlyn. Okay, so let's get into cravings. So is that a big topic that comes up a lot with your clients?
Yes. So I think yes, absolutely it is. And I think honestly with the pandemic, it's been a big topic with everybody. I would say probably everybody in the world, especially for shift workers, from what I've seen as well, because they tend to have a lot of stress placed on them. Frontline workers are experiencing a lot of stress, staff shortages, different things like that. And then, that can play into, how we're feeling, coping tools. Maybe we don't have the best coping tools set up, so we're reaching for food instead to make us feel better. And then it's kind of just that cycle that begins. So yeah, that's definitely something I've seen a lot of working with clients and, most individuals that I've talked to who are shift workers in general. And it's just, it's about, the first thing is not denying yourself, those foods that you enjoy, because popular saying that I like to say is, the thing that we try to avoid is what we're attracted to the most. when we're
Right.
telling ourselves, that we can't have something, obviously we're going to want to have it. So it's about enjoying the foods that we like in moderation. And then, it's also about finding other coping tools besides, food that can help us through these stressful times, because a lot of the time that's what we rely on for our coping tool. And it's something that long-term isn't really going to do enough for us. So a long-winded answer, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
No, that's good. Okay, so say I'm a nurse, I'm at work, I've eaten my lunch already, and I have some change in my pocket. The vending machine's right there. It's got all the luxurious candy and junk food that I want. What are some of those coping tools that I could implement today to save me from going to that vending machine and getting that can of pop, or having that granola bar? Because I get what you're saying. Like when you do want something bad, how often do you listen to that voice to the point where it's automatically going to just become a normal response?
Got you. Yes. So awesome question. So that is something, I like to always remind either my clients or anybody that we're working with, what is the goal you're working towards, whether it's, to be healthier, to eat more nutritious foods, for any kind of weight loss, what is it that you're working towards that is kind of making you question whether or not you should go to the vending machine. And that's going to be the biggest thing that's, going to drive you when you're kind of caught in, should I, shouldn't I? I'm kind of feeling the craving, and is going back to that why. Why did you start? Why are you taking these steps to be healthier, eating more nutritious food, lose that weight? And keeping that in the back of your mind to kind of motivate you and push you forward closer to your goals.
Awesome. So I'm assuming that's a big topic that you discuss as well with your clients, is goal setting. Cool. Let's get into that actually. So how do you structure a goal for a client that you feel that they're going to be super committed to?
Yeah. So the first thing, and probably the most important thing I always keep in mind is this going to be sustainable for the client? Is this going to be realistic for the client? Because we can write all of the pretty goals on paper and it can look wonderful, but at the end of the day, are they going to be able to go about their life and actually implement this and see a change and feel like they're able to do this? So that's the most important thing that we keep in mind. I always too like to ask my clients, what is the goal you're working towards and what is your perspective? So, I may think that, let's include some more protein foods, you'll feel a great change, you'll find you're more full. But maybe the client's thinking, no, I'm not sleeping well, I want to actually focus on putting my phone away 1 hour before bed, or doing something else and focus on that this week. So we always take the client's approach of, what they want to focus on for the week. And I always just guide and support them throughout the process, because at the end of the day, they are in the driver's seat for the program. I'm the one guiding them and providing them the information, but I want them to feel motivated and confident and, build up that momentum and work towards getting them where they want to go.
Awesome. So you also become like a good support buddy along the way, right? And making sure that they're staying on top of that. Okay, awesome. What's your thoughts on fasting? For shift workers?
Yes. So honestly, that's tricky, because a lot of the, the general or the more popular fasts are things such as intermittent fasting. But when you think about going from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m., and if you're only eating window, and then you think about, except I'm going to be sleeping this time, and then I'm going to be working through the night, and it gets sticky after that. A lot of the time for fasting, the benefit is just the decrease in calories. Those, that little window of time provides, because normally most people will eat for, we'll say, like 12, 16 hours of the day. It kind of depends on your schedule, but fasting, really cuts down to only like 8, 6, whatever certain amount of hours that you will be eating through the day. So a lot of the time the benefits just come from only eating throughout a smaller period of time, which of course happens to decrease the number of calories that you're eating. For shift workers, again, very sticky situation. It's honestly, you're probably better off, finding a more sustainable habit that'll work better for you and your rotating schedule, rather than, cutting yourself down to only so many hours through a day and then trying to figure out how to adjust that to your schedule when your days change to nights. And it's just it seems like a lot of work, for something that might not push you towards where you need to be. And, especially shift workers need that energy. They need that push a lot of the time. Shift workers are the frontline workers and they have a lot on the go. So it's very important to make sure you're getting enough calories in so you're able to be fully present and have that energy that you need as well. So fasting for shift workers, I probably would try to veer away from and probably just try to work towards finding a more sustainable eating pattern that works for you and helps push you towards your goals.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, you know what? Like at the end of the day, everybody is different. I have fasting. I have a fasting routine that I do use. And you know what? I found that I was going back and forth between having like a regular eating schedule all the time. But then I started to feel that my stomach would start to give me issues. So I actually went back to a fasting routine. And you know what? It took me some time to kind of figure out how to do it properly. And like, you know what? Everybody responds differently to different methods, right? And it was just one of those things that I'm always testing and trying new things out, right? So who knows, it might work for some people, it may not work for others, but I think the best thing is that you have something you can stay consistent with, right? And you know, I probably am gonna come up with a YouTube or something like that on the fasting, just so like I could get it out there and see if anybody can relate or if they've had experience with it, because yeah, it is sticky, it's not perfect, right? And you know, like I said, you just got to keep trying different methods that work best for you. So when it comes down to, you know, people maybe experiencing gut issues, is that another big topic that is brought up with your clients?
Yes. So that's one I've heard quite a few times too. A lot of the time, especially when you're up during the night and you're eating foods, that can be the biggest problem for GI issues there. I always just like to say, try to stay away from spicy foods and high fat foods. So the reason for that is high fat foods, they take a lot longer to digest. So they sit a lot longer in your stomach. And you know, when they're sitting in your stomach, you can kind of start feeling that GI discomfort or GI symptoms from that. So sticking and trying out some more, carb protein snacks or something that, is going to be a lot easier on your stomach is one way. But, even as you mentioned in the previous question, in our previous little chat, it's all going to be different for everybody. It's going to be figuring out what works best for you, because some people can tolerate big meals in the night, some people can't. It's going to be about figuring out what's going to work best for you, and a little bit of trial and error there.
Okay, so stay away from the spices and stay away from fats is a big one. Okay, yeah. Awesome. Is there any other foods that specifically night shift that people should stay away from? Is there any that come to mind?
So it's tricky to say, but big meals sometimes can be a little bit more of a problem just because your body's not usually used to digesting so much food during the night. So that could be another thing to keep in mind. And then in terms of just kind of figuring out through the day what works best for you, and through the night, things like, yogurt or smoothies or things that are kind of already broken down and a little bit easier on your stomach could be good choices instead. Yogurt is great with good bacteria for our stomach, so it can really help out if you're having GI issues.
Okay, that's awesome. So, you're basically saying, people get into those probiotics and prebiotics. Is that another option as well as like a last resort when it comes down to supplements, or is that something that you would maybe recommend sooner than later?
Yeah. So honestly, if you're having a lot of GI issues and you're not finding any relief from, some trial and error, I would definitely recommend looking into some probiotics, prebiotics, just test trialing a few things and seeing what works. Because obviously no one wants to live with, those stomach pains and all those issues, especially when you're working.
Absolutely. No, I'm a victim of it. And that's why I mentioned earlier to you that I was doing Viome. I do the gut test and stuff like that. And that was a big signal to me. It gives you this pie graph or percentage, basically saying, out of 100, this is what your gut looks like. Out of 100, this is what your microbiome is looking like. And it's very detailed. And that's, I felt those symptoms. I'm like, wow, like this is telling me that I really need to change my eating habits or make sure that I'm supplementing certain bacteria into my stomach to help me, decrease the inflammation or stomach discomfort that I was experiencing. Cause yeah, like it's a a serious thing. And I just think that, we could do a lot of damage to our stomach when we're eating the incorrect foods. Like, yeah, we're already hurting ourselves getting the, improper sleep where we're affecting our hormones and our circadian rhythm. But we are making it 100 times worse when you're just pounding back the sugar and, you're eating heavy foods and your stomach is giving you all these signals. Are you listening to those signals, or are you going to anybody like a dietitian to help you, clear up those signals? Or are you just going to continue down that path and just say, it's just how my body's feeling, right?
And that's when it lands in their hands. And actually, Spencer, just on the topic of microbiome, so that's a big thing too with food and dietitians, and I think it's wonderful that you get yours tested every year and adjust as needed, because that's something that, we can neglect so much. That's a topic that's not normally talked about. A lot of the time, the foods that we eat give off the bacteria, and it influences our microbiome. So essentially just the little, the part in our stomachs that kind of help digest food the most. And when our microbiome is altered or affected, it can actually have an effect on our mental health too. So, just being cautious of choosing, certain sweetened foods or a lot of sugary foods, baked goods, things like that on a consistent basis. Obviously, we want to enjoy ourselves. There's no question. But just also being, of course we want to enjoy them. I love them. I'm a big chocolate person. I could not live without ice cream. And
me too.
Yeah, love it. But just also being cautious and, thinking that if I'm eating this every day for every meal, obviously this is going to start affecting, my microbiome, and there could be effects on my mental health too.
Right. And a lot of people don't it's not that they don't know, but your stomach is your second brain, is what I've come to learn, that, what you eat is how you're going to feel, and how you feel is how you're going to present yourself on a daily. So if you're eating junk food, you're not going to feel super high energetic and feeling good and happy to talk to people, or just feeling motivated to go and want to do anything, right? So whatever you eat is going to be a representation of how you are as a person, right? And it's so important that the field of microbiome should be out on the mainstream a lot more, because it's almost like, I don't see it, so I shouldn't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, your stomach is your second brain, and the better that you treat it, the better you're going to be able to perform. Yeah. And no, it's awesome. Are you big into biohacking by any chance?
I'm not sure what that is. Can you explain a little bit more?
Okay, so when it comes down to biohacking, there's a gentleman that I like to listen to named Dave Asprey. He does the Bulletproof Coffee, and he's got a podcast called the Bulletproof Radio. And so he does, things where it comes down to cryotherapy, infrared. He's big on the fats and the fasting, and he talks a lot about the gut health and stuff like that. And his goal is to live to, I think it's 180 years old. Wow. Yeah, just by, doing all these, not necessarily manipulations to the body. You're not really taking anything away from the body, but you're just trying to promote a healthy gut, promote better sleep and recovery, and promoting longevity when it comes down to his age. So I thought I'd ask you, but he talks a bit about gut health and stuff like that, and it's very important, and it's great that it's something that you also cover a lot with your clients, because it's crazy how damaging your stomach can get the more abuse you do to it, right?
Yeah, and I think microbiome too is honestly something I only just learned about halfway through my university degree, and I think it's something that's not talked about enough, like you said, Spencer. And when we don't talk about it enough, people might not assume or see the connection between our gut health and our brain health. So again, it's just something to keep chatting about, keep the conversation open, and hopefully more people can get to know a little bit more about the microbiome and, how it affects our mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Let's get into energy drinks and coffee. I feel like that's a big one that I see a lot at work, that people are consuming coffee all the way throughout the night. It'll be 4 a.m. and guys are making a fresh pot of coffee. And I'm sitting there scratching my head like, yo, don't you want to go to bed in the next, 3 hours?
Yeah, that's rough. And honestly, I've never worked a night shift before myself, but I can only imagine, how difficult it is to stay awake during those kind of shifts. With energy drinks, that's something I would try to steer people away from, just because essentially, all that added sugar and all these different additives and you don't always really know what it is that you're going to be consuming in these different drinks. So if you can, I'd steer away from them as much as possible. Also, they contain a lot of sugar. So, if you're consuming them in excess, you're probably going to notice you're getting a lot of sugar crashes where, as we talked about before, if you eat something that's sugar or carb, or any kind of sugary drink, you're going to notice that your stomach's able to break it down pretty quick. So your blood sugars will probably go up really quick. And then, it'll follow by a very quick downward drop where you feel, tired, sluggish, all those things. When we're talking more about coffee, though, I think that's something that's definitely better for shift work and just in terms of, everyday life. There's been, some evidence that coffee actually might be linked to lowering the risk of, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and, even things like Parkinson's. So there's some emerging research that's pretty interesting on it. I would try to, stay within the recommendations for your shifts or, for your everyday life, which is about 3 to 5 8-ounce cups of coffee. So about 400 milligrams of caffeine per day. Obviously, there's a lot of people who love it and feel like, it's going to give them that extra energy boost. And, I know a lot of people who like to enjoy it in excess because they enjoy the taste. But, when you're a shift worker, it's good to keep in mind that you don't want to find you're lacking energy on your shifts when you should be, and you're kind of all out of whack because, as you mentioned, your coworker drinking caffeine a couple hours before, shift may be over, and then you find you can't sleep. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And it's like you could have your coffee, but don't fill it up with the creamers and all the other crap that shouldn't really be in it. Like, have it black is probably what you would recommend, right? And now, what about decaf? Do you find that, if somebody was big into drinking coffee, all day, kind of as their main source of hydration, could decaf also be a better option for them as well?
Yeah, so it definitely could. The thing to keep in mind is sometimes, we're drinking a lot of coffee, we're not getting enough water in. Dehydration can kind of be an issue there too. If you, prefer to try out decaf to try to mitigate the effects on your sleep and just throughout the workday so you're not getting the shakes or anything, absolutely go right ahead. Everybody's going to take a different perspective on that. But if you can also, carry around a water bottle during your shifts, make sure you have one, where you can quickly grab it and take a swig, because a lot of the time when we're drinking other things, water is the last thing on our mind. So if you can have a water bottle, that would be wonderful. And then in terms of, you mentioned black coffee could probably be the best. Yeah, absolutely. But, if you feel like you like to have some milk in there, some sugar, go ahead. Obviously, if it's like you're having more creamer or more milk than you are coffee and more sugar too, then maybe we'll try to regress that back a little bit because that can be a lot in one cup. But, milk could probably be the better option over creamer just because it can be a little lower in fat and still give you some protein too. But yeah, it's all in all, it's just moderation and kind of working with what works best for the person.
Okay, awesome. When it comes down to, let's say, drinking coffee and eating food for shift workers at nighttime specifically, is there a certain time that they should kind of stop, or do you think that they could kind of go throughout the whole night until they're done their shift?
Yeah, so that's something I'm still kind of researching at the moment because, I know for Marshall, when he is switching from his day shifts to night shifts, he'll be eating through the day. Because he usually only sleeps in probably until about 10 a.m. because obviously your body's still on the regular shift. Right. And then he'll just eat through the day and have some snacks to bring throughout the night. So we are thinking about possibly, trying to have him fast from 12 to 6, just because it kind of still allows your body to stay in that regular circadian rhythm and, regular state of meal timings, etc. Again, it's just something, I'm continuing to research, because then again, it also brings into consideration, obviously, shift workers need their energy through their shifts. We don't want them to lack energy.
Right.
And when we, go a long period of time without eating, again, it affects our blood sugars too. A lot of the time, my clients and I like to talk about, having something every 3 to 4 hours as like another goal. Obviously, it can be different. People sometimes don't eat all day, sometimes eat only in the night. So it can be a bit of a journey working up towards that. But that's something that can really benefit our blood sugars and just overall benefit our energy levels too. So I'd say probably in conclusion, don't take out food. If you're used to eating through your night shifts at certain intervals, then great. And if it works for you, awesome. Personally, I'm still looking into the research to see what works best. So I'll just say stay tuned.
Awesome. Stay tuned. So the biggest thing is that trying to keep your blood sugars level throughout the night. Because like you said, you want to avoid that crash. You want to make sure that you're balancing and staying energetic in your profession. Like everybody's different. So for my job, I sit on my butt for 12 hours. It sucks. It is what it is. I operate a crane, right? And yeah, there's some days that, I am extremely tired, but I've over, the past couple months, I found a technique that has kind of worked for me finally. And it all comes down to like how I prep my nights leading up to my actual night shift. That has made a difference on how I feel throughout my actual working shift. And then also same thing as you've mentioned for Marshall is cutting my food off at 12 o'clock all the way until the time I go to bed. I actually don't even have breakfast. So it ends up turning into a reverse fast for me. From sometimes I'll even stop as early as 10 o'clock. So I'll go from 10 o'clock until about 2 or 3 p.m. And when I wake up, and I'll automatically have a meal right away. And then when I go on my days, I actually don't eat until 12 o'clock. But it only depends if I'm training that day. So if I'm training, I'm actually going to break my fast as soon as I wake up, because I have an intense workout that I have to focus on, especially doing 10 to 13 hours of training a week, right? So I guess it just depends on your livelihood. But if you're somebody that isn't extremely active, having that fast up until 12 p.m. might be helpful for them. And then, like you said, at nighttime, cutting it at 10 or 12 o'clock. And then that way, their stomach isn't getting affected. They'll go to sleep a little bit easier. And, the circadian rhythm won't take that big of a hit as much as it already is, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And, I like Spencer too. You've kind of emphasized, you found what works best for you, and it's taken a little bit, but, you've gotten into that habit, because, everybody's going to have a different one. So because props to you, because it's tricky. It's so tricky.
Absolutely. You know what? And it's going to be a forever test. You know what I mean? Like there's going to be days where like it's not going to work. And then there's some days I'm going to feel amazing. Right. And it's just, sticking to the routine for a good chunk of time. I usually like to test things for about 3 months, give or take. And if it's not working, switch it up and try something else. Right. And that's the best thing, is just never give up on, like I always like to say, is trying to be 1% better every day, right? And so the only way you're going to be able to do that is not give up and just keep testing different things out. So I look forward to hearing more about what you come up and research with that and how Marshall is doing. Awesome. Well, you know what? We covered a lot of the questions on you being a dietitian. Is there anything that you feel that we might have missed that you're very passionate about that you want to share more for shift workers?
Yeah, actually, you actually just brought one up. You mentioned you would normally wait about 3 months before you make a change to your habits. That's something that's huge. When we're working towards a goal, when we're trying to make changes, especially when it comes to nutrition and fitness, we got to give it time. If you don't give it time, you don't put in that consistency, then you're probably not going to see the change. And we got to be patient with it too. That's a big thing, because if we're not patient, we don't give our body that time to adjust, then, it's probably not going to work out. I have actually a lot of people that reach out to me and ask for, can I have like 1 or 2 sessions with you just to kind of like chat and get some information? And I always like to say, I feel like doing that would be not only a disservice to you because, you're going to need at least a minimum of 3 months, if not likely more time working on and, waiting to see how things go as you're adjusting and making these changes. But, also a disservice to me because there's only so much I can do in 1 to 2 sessions. And, professionally, I always like to give the best that I can to my clients. And that's something that we're really big on is, we got to put in the time and, be patient, but know that the results are going to be at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. And that's a good point. Like, yeah, like don't give up. If you're investing money into somebody's service, like give them the full range of time that they need to make sure that you are being successful instead of giving you a couple, tips here and there. It's like you could go on Google and get the same thing. But when you're talking to a professional, they want to make sure that they're seeing the end of that tunnel where, they could let you go and you could be on your own and know that they have done everything in their power to make sure that that person is successful. Right. And yeah, that's so important. Awesome. So are you still big into soccer and wrestling?
Yes.
What's your fitness world looking like right now?
Oh goodness, my fitness world, just because of COVID right now, is looking like my home with some weights in it currently. Big into soccer. I actually played a lot in university too. That's, something I'd love to go back to, just kind of playing a house league, whatever, adult, what have you, when things open back up. Wrestling I haven't actually done in quite a few years. Unfortunately, my university didn't offer it, but if it ever comes a point in the future, absolutely would love to. I'm also big into powerlifting too. So now that the gyms, cool. Now that the gyms are open, I'm super excited to get back to a powerlifting gym.
Awesome. Where do you do your powerlifting?
So for most of the time, I did actually it in Kingston at this little powerlifting gym. It was actually run by a nice couple who were powerlifters themselves and kind of just opened it up to their family, friends, etc. So that was wonderful. They unfortunately have closed, so now I'm in the search for a new one in the Hamilton area now.
Okay, well, I'll help you out for the areas in Hamilton that will support those needs, because I did CrossFit for a number of years and stuff like that. I didn't go into the powerlifting, but I was big in the CrossFit, and a lot of those CrossFit gyms, they all have powerlifting and stuff like that. Okay, awesome. Well, where can people find you, Kaitlyn?
Yeah, so you can find me at Shiftwork Nutrition RD on Instagram. That's my main platform right now. I also run a fun little Shiftwork community for individuals on Facebook too, where I post a lot of free trainings. The link is through my Instagram bio, or you can just reach out and we can have a little chat. And I'd love to welcome you to our little community.
Awesome. Yes, that's right, listeners. Find her on Instagram. Her Instagram is tons of energy, tons of fun, and very, very informative. Her stories that she posts are awesome. I like looking at them. I'm not usually a big person that looks at stories, but Kaitlyn's are definitely one of those ones that I'm like, oh, that's good information. I could definitely use that. And I've actually had some friends reach out to me being like, oh, I really love her stories. So I highly recommend you jump on over to her Instagram, get into her Facebook group, and get connected and join the community of people that are also going through the same journey that you are as well. So Kaitlyn, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to join me, the Shiftwork athlete, share your knowledge, your information, and help out this community of healthy and growing strong community of healthy shift workers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Spencer, and big shout out to you for, doing the hard work, putting that work in as a shift worker. I give you all the respect for that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You know what? Yeah, the shifts suck, but I love my job just like every other shift worker. If we had the choice, I don't think we really change anything. Like, yeah, sleeping during the day, having a regular shift is nice, but there's something nice also about having that separation from the crazy world at nighttime too. So you know what? It's a juggle. Some days I love it, some days I hate it, but at the end of the day, like, I don't know, I wouldn't really change it. But it's nice that we have our own little community and we aren't part of the regular sleeping world and eating world. So yeah.
Wonderful.
All right,
That's
Kaitlyn.
awesome.
Well, thank you so much again, and I'll chat to you later.
Thanks, Spencer.
Have a good one. Wow, what a phenomenal podcast with Kaitlyn Myles, registered dietitian. Like, wow, There was some really important information in this podcast that, opened my eyes to utilizing more of the freezer, and then also being more patient with things or systems that I'm implementing into my daily routine. So if you guys really enjoyed this podcast, please make sure that you are following, subscribing, giving me a rating based off your opinion if you enjoyed it. I love candid feedback. And if there's anything else that you would love to hear from me or other people that I am podcasting, please share in the comments. And I look forward to sharing my next podcast with you guys. So thank you once again. My name is Spencer Butler, Shift Work Athlete, and I'll catch you guys in the next podcast. Peace out.